Welcome back. Imagine reaching into your pocket and pulling out a simple penny, only to discover that it could be worth far more than 1 cent. What if one small detail, barely visible to the naked eye, could turn an ordinary coin into something collectors hunt for across the country? Today, we're uncovering the story behind the 1960 Lincoln penny, a coin that looks common at first glance but holds secrets that continue to surprise even experienced collectors. The 1960 Lincoln penny is part of one of the most recognizable coin series in American history. First introduced in 1909 to honor President Abraham Lincoln, this design became the first U.S. coin to feature a real historical figure. By 1960, the Lincoln cent had already been in circulation for over 50 years, becoming a familiar piece of everyday life for millions of Americans. The D Mint mark on this coin tells us it was produced at the Denver Mint, one of the major facilities responsible for supplying coins across the western United States. At the time, the United States was experiencing rapid growth. The economy was expanding, and the demand for coins was higher than ever. The Denver Mint struck over 1 billion Lincoln pennies in 1960 alone, making this coin seem extremely common. But as we'll soon discover, not all 1960 pennies are created equal. The coin itself is made primarily of copper, with a small percentage of tin and zinc. It has that familiar reddish-brown color when new, although many have darkened over time. On the front, you'll see the profile of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner. Above his head is the word Liberty, while the year 1960 appears on the right side. Just beneath the date, you'll find the small but important D Mint mark. On the reverse side, the design features 2 wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent and United States of America. This classic wheat design had been used since 1909 and would soon be replaced in 1959 with the Lincoln Memorial reverse. But by 1960, the memorial design was already in place, showing the iconic building in Washington, D.C., with incredible detail for such a small coin. Now here's where things get interesting. The 1960 Lincoln penny is famous for one key variation that has captured the attention of collectors for decades. This variation is known as the small date and large date difference. At first glance, both versions look nearly identical. But when you take a closer look, you'll notice subtle differences in the shape and size of the numbers in the date.in, the large date version. The numbers appear taller and more evenly spaced. The 6 and 0 are more rounded and bold. In the small date version, the numbers are slightly thinner and more delicate. The 0 in particular looks smaller and more oval-shaped. These differences happen during the minting process, likely due to adjustments in the dies used to strike the coins. What makes this variation so important is that the small date version is significantly harder to find, especially in higher grades. While millions of 1960 pennies were produced, only a smaller portion fall into the small date category. This instantly makes them more desirable among collectors. But that's not the only factor that can increase the value of this coin. Condition plays a massive role. Most 1960 pennies have been heavily circulated, meaning they show wear, scratches, and discoloration. However, coins that have been preserved in near-perfect condition, often referred to as mint state, can be worth far more. For example, a typical circulated 1960 penny might only be worth a few cents above face value. But a high-grade small-date version, especially one with a bright red luster, can sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars at auction. There have been cases where pristine examples graded at the highest levels have reached impressive prices, simply because they are so rare in that condition. Collectors also look for errors, and the 1960 penny does not disappoint. Some coins show doubling in the lettering or numbers, known as a double die error. Others may have off-center strikes or unusual markings caused during the minting process. These errors can significantly increase a coin's value, sometimes turning a common penny into a highly sought-after collectible. So how can you tell if you have a valuable 1960 penny? First, check for the mint mark. The small d beneath the date confirms it was minted in Denver. Next, examine the date carefully. Compare the size and shape of the numbers to determine whether you have a small date or large date variety. A magnifying glass or a simple coin app can help you spot these differences more easily. Then, take a close look at the coin's condition. Is the surface smooth and shiny, or is it worn and dull? Are the details sharp, especially in Lincoln's hair and the building on the reverse? The better the condition, the higher the potential value. It's also important to be aware of fakes or altered coins. While the 1960 penny is not one of the most counterfeited coins, some people attempt to modify dates or mint marks to create the appearance of a rarer variety. Always compare your coin to verified images from trusted sources, and if you believe you have something valuable, consider having it authenticated by a professional grading service. Here's a fun detail that many people don't realize. During this period, the U.S. Mint was experimenting with different die designs and production methods to keep up with demand. This is one reason why variations like the small date and large date exist. These small changes, made decades ago without much thought, are now the very details that collectors obsess over. Another surprising fact is how many of these coins are still out there. Because pennies are often overlooked, it's possible that valuable 1960 coins are sitting in jars, drawers, or old collections, waiting to be rediscovered. This sense of hidden treasure is part of what makes coin collecting so exciting. Collectors today love the 1960 Lincoln penny not just for its potential value, but for the story it tells. It represents a time in American history when everyday objects were made with care and detail. It also shows how even the smallest differences can create big opportunities for those who pay attention. That there's something fascinating about holding a piece of history in your hand. This coin may have passed through countless hands over the years, used to buy candy, pay for a newspaper, or simply forgotten in a drawer. Yet today, it has become a symbol of curiosity, patience, and discovery as you go through your own coins. Take a moment to look a little closer. That ordinary penny might not be so ordinary after all. The 1960 Lincoln penny reminds us that value isn't always obvious at first glance. Sometimes, it takes a careful eye and a bit of knowledge to uncover what's truly special. And who knows, the next time you check your pocket change, you might just find a small detail that changes everything. Welcome back. Imagine holding a penny that looks completely ordinary, something you might ignore in your pocket, but hidden within it could be a detail so small, so easy to miss, that it turns that simple coin into something collectors actively search for. Today, we're uncovering the story of the 1962 Lincoln penny, a coin that quietly exists in millions of collections, yet still holds mystery, history, and in some cases, surprising value. The 1962 Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin produced in the United States and struck at the Denver Mint, which is why you'll see a small D mint mark just below the date on the front of the coin. At first glance, it doesn't look special. It carries the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front and the wheat ears design on the back, a design many Americans recognize instantly. But as with many coins, the real story lies beneath the surface. To understand this coin, we need to step back into the early 1960s. America was in a time of change, growth, and tension. The space race was heating up, the economy was expanding, and everyday commerce relied heavily on coins like the penny. In 1962, the U.S. Mint produced billions of pennies to keep up with demand. The Denver Mint alone struck over 1.7 billion pennies that year. That number might make you think this coin is common, and in many ways it is. But within such massive production, small variations, errors, and exceptional condition coins began to stand out. The design of the 1962 penny follows the classic Lincoln wheat cent style that had been in use since 1909. On the front, you'll see Abraham Lincoln's profile facing right, along with the inscriptions "In God We Trust" above, "Liberty" to the left, and the date with the small D mint mark to the right. On the reverse, 2 wheat stalks frame the words 1 cent and United States of America, with E pluribus unum at the top. This design was nearing the end of its run, as it would be replaced just a few years later in 1959 by the Lincoln Memorial design, making wheat pennies increasingly nostalgic for collectors. One of the most interesting aspects of the 1962 penny is its composition. It is made of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. This gives it that rich, warm, reddish-brown color when preserved well. Over time, many of these coins darken due to oxidation, but if you ever come across one with its original red luster, you might be holding something much more valuable than you think. Now let's talk about what really drives curiosity: errors and variations. While the 1962 penny is not widely known for dramatic mint errors like some other years, there are still subtle imperfections that collectors watch for closely. These include repunched mint marks, slight doubling in the lettering, and die cracks that create unusual patterns on the coin's surface. These small details are easy to overlook, but for a trained eye, they can mean the difference between a 1-cent coin and something worth significantly more. Condition is another major factor. Because so many of these pennies were produced, most of them entered circulation and experienced wear. They were used in everyday transactions, passed from hand to hand, and eventually ended up in jars, drawers, or lost entirely. However, coins that were never circulated, known as mint state coins, are much rarer. A 1962 penny in pristine condition, with sharp details and original red color, can attract strong interest from collectors. So, is this coin actually valuable? The answer depends on what you have. A typical circulated 1962 penny might only be worth a few cents. But when you move into higher grades, especially those graded by professional services, the value can rise dramatically. For example, a 1962 penny in mint state condition with a bright red finish has been known to sell for tens or even hundreds of dollars. In rare cases, coins graded at the very top levels with near-perfect surfaces and exceptional eye appeal have reached even higher prices at auction. There have been documented sales where high-grade examples of the 1962 penny fetched impressive amounts, surprising many who assumed these coins were too common to matter. This is where the world of coin collecting becomes fascinating. It's not always about rarity in terms of numbers produced, but rarity in terms of condition and uniqueness. If you're wondering whether you might have a valuable 1962 penny, there are a few simple things to check. First, look at the color. Coins are generally classified as red, red-brown, or brown. Red coins, which retain most of their original mint luster, are usually the most valuable. Next, examine the details. Are Lincoln's hair and the wheat stalks sharp and well-defined, or are they worn down? The sharper the details, the better the grade. You should also check for any unusual markings. Use a magnifying glass if possible. Look closely at the mint mark. Is it clear and properly formed, or does it look doubled or slightly off? Check the lettering for any signs of doubling. These small details can turn an ordinary coin into something collectors are eager to buy. Of course, with any collectible item, there's always the question of authenticity. Fortunately, the 1962 penny is not commonly counterfeited due to its generally modest value. However, altered coins do exist. Some people try to modify mint marks or clean coins to make them appear more valuable. Cleaning a coin, by the way, often reduces its value significantly, even if it looks shinier. Collectors prefer coins in their natural state, even if they show some aging. A good way to confirm authenticity and value is to have the coin evaluated by a professional grading service. These organizations assess the coin's condition, verify its authenticity, and assign it a grade that helps determine its market value. For serious collectors, this step adds confidence and credibility. Now here's something many people don't realize. The 1962 penny represents one of the last years before major changes began to affect U.S. coinage. Just a few years later, in 1965, the composition of many coins would change due to rising metal costs, and the way coins were produced would also evolve. This places the 1962 penny in an interesting historical position, right at the edge of a transition period in American coinage. Another fun fact is that billions of these coins still exist today, hiding in plain sight. They're in old collections, forgotten piggy banks, and even still circulating in small numbers. That means the hunt is still alive. Anyone can potentially find one, and with a bit of luck, maybe even a high-grade example. Collectors love the 1962 penny not because it's the rarest coin, but because it represents accessibility. It's a coin that beginners can start with, yet it still offers depth for experienced collectors. The challenge of finding one in exceptional condition, or discovering a subtle error, keeps the excitement going. It's a reminder that even the most common objects can hold hidden value if you know what to look for. There's also a nostalgic element. For many collectors, wheat pennies bring back memories of childhood, of searching through change, or inheriting a small collection from a family member. The 1962 penny fits perfectly into that story, bridging the past and present in a small copper coin. As we come to the end, think about this. How many times have you ignored a penny, or walked past one on the ground without a second thought? What if that tiny coin carried a story, a history, and the potential for something more? The 1962 Lincoln penny may not always shout its value, but it quietly invites those who are curious to take a closer look. And maybe that's the real beauty of coin collecting. It turns everyday objects into pieces of history, waiting to be rediscovered. So the next time you come across a penny, especially one from 1962 with that small D mint mark, don't rush past it. Take a moment, examine it, and ask yourself, what hidden story might this coin be holding? Welcome back. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a simple penny, and discovering it might be worth far more than just 1 cent. Not because it's made of gold, not because it's ancient, but because of something almost invisible, something most people overlook every single day. Today, we're talking about the 1975 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that looks completely ordinary at first glance, yet carries a story that has fascinated collectors for decades. The 1975 Lincoln penny is part of the long-running Lincoln cent series that began in 1909. By 1975, these coins were already a familiar part of everyday life in America. Millions were produced and circulated widely, passing through countless hands without a second thought. If you lived in the United States during that time, chances are you handled several of these coins without realizing their hidden potential. Now here's where it gets interesting. When people hear no mint mark, they often assume that means something rare or unusual. But in the case of the 1975 penny, most of them actually do not have a mint mark, and that's completely normal. These coins were struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which at the time did not place a mint mark on pennies. So the absence of a mint mark doesn't automatically make the coin rare. But don't stop there, because this is exactly where many collectors miss the real story. The 1975 Lincoln penny was produced during a time when the United States Mint was still using a bronze composition for cents. Each coin is made of 95% copper and 5% zinc, giving it that familiar reddish-brown color. It weighs about 3.11 grams and has a smooth edge. On the front, you'll see the profile of Abraham Lincoln facing right, along with the words, "In God We Trust, Liberty," and the date 1975. On the back, the design features the Lincoln Memorial, with the tiny seated statue of Lincoln visible between the columns if you look closely. At a glance, it's just another penny. But collectors know better. What makes certain 1975 no-mint mark pennies valuable is not the absence of the mint mark itself, but the condition of the coin and the possibility of rare errors. Most of these coins were heavily circulated, meaning they show wear, scratches, and fading. However, coins that have been preserved in near-perfect condition, especially those with a bright red color, can be surprisingly valuable. In coin collecting, condition is everything. A 1975 penny in worn condition might only be worth its face value. But the same coin, untouched and in mint state, can be worth significantly more. Coins graded at the highest levels with sharp details and full original luster are the ones that attract serious attention. But the real excitement begins when we talk about errors. Mint errors are like accidents that slipped through quality control, and they often turn ordinary coins into collector treasures. For the 1975 penny, some known errors include off-center strikes, double die varieties, and coins struck on the wrong planchet. These errors are rare, and when they do appear, they can dramatically increase the coin's value. One of the most sought-after features is a strong strike combined with a clean surface and vibrant red color. Collectors refer to these as red coins, meaning they still retain most of their original copper shine. These coins are far more desirable than those that have turned brown over time. Now let's talk about real value, because this is where curiosity turns into excitement. While most 1975 no-mint mark pennies are only worth a few cents, high-grade examples have sold for impressive amounts. Coins graded at the very top levels, such as MS-66 or MS-67, have been known to sell for hundreds of dollars. In rare cases, especially when a coin has exceptional eye appeal or a unique error, the price can go even higher. Think about that for a moment. A coin that once bought a piece of candy could now be worth more than a nice dinner, or even much more depending on the rarity. So how do you know if the coin you have is valuable? First, take a close look at the condition. Is the coin shiny and bright, or is it dull and worn? Check for scratches, marks, or discoloration. The fewer imperfections, the better. Next, examine the details. Are the lines in the Lincoln Memorial sharp? Can you see the fine features clearly? Strong detail is a good sign. Then, look for anything unusual. Does the design appear slightly off-center? Are there doubled letters or numbers? Does the coin feel heavier or lighter than expected? These could be clues that you're holding something special. It's also important to be cautious. Because some coins can be valuable, there are people who try to alter or fake them. For example, someone might try to remove a mint mark from another coin to make it appear more interesting. That's why authenticity matters. If you believe you have a valuable coin, it's always a good idea to have it evaluated by a professional grading service. Here's a fun detail that surprises many people. Even though billions of pennies were produced over the years, only a tiny fraction survive in top condition. Most were used daily, tossed into jars, or lost over time. That means finding a high-grade 1975 penny today is much harder than it sounds. Another interesting fact is how collecting habits have changed. In the past, people didn't think much about saving pennies. But today, with growing interest in coin collecting and online marketplaces, even common coins are being re-examined. People are going back through old collections, piggy banks, and inherited coin jars, hoping to uncover hidden value. And sometimes, they do. Collectors love the 1975 no-mint mark penny not because it's the rarest coin ever made, but because it represents the thrill of the hunt. It's a reminder that valuable items don't always look extraordinary. Sometimes, they're hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone curious enough to take a closer look. That there's also a deeper connection. Coins like this carry history. They've passed through countless hands, witnessed everyday transactions, and quietly traveled through time. Holding one is like holding a small piece of the past. For many collectors, the appeal isn't just about money. It's about discovery, learning, and the excitement of finding something unexpected. That moment when you realize a simple coin might be worth more than you ever imagined. That's what keeps people searching. So the next time you come across a 1975 penny without a mint mark, don't ignore it. Take a closer look. Check its condition. Look for unusual features. Because even though most are common, a few stand out, and those are the ones that can surprise you. And who knows? That ordinary coin sitting in your drawer right now might have a story you haven't uncovered yet. Welcome back. Imagine picking up a simple penny from your pocket, something you've seen 1,000 times before, and realizing it might be worth far more than 1 cent. Not because it's shiny or old-looking, but because of what's missing. Today, we're diving into the story of the 1978 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, a coin that looks ordinary but hides details that collectors quietly search for every single day. The 1978 Lincoln penny is part of one of the longest-running coin series in American history. First introduced in 1909 to honor President Abraham Lincoln, this penny became a symbol of everyday American life. By 1978, billions of these coins were being produced, passing through hands, pockets, and cash registers across the country. At first glance, there's nothing special about it. But when you notice that there is no mint mark on the front, that's where the story begins. To understand this coin, we need to go back to how coins were made in the United States during the late 1970s. At that time, pennies were produced at different mints, mainly Philadelphia and Denver. Coins from Denver carried a small D mint mark, while coins from Philadelphia often had no mint mark at all. So when you see a 1978 penny with no mint mark, it means it was made in Philadelphia, which was actually the primary mint for producing pennies that year. In 1978, the Philadelphia Mint struck more than 5.5 billion pennies. That's an enormous number, and it might make you think these coins are common and not worth much. And in most cases, that's true. But here's where things get interesting. Not all of those billions of coins were made perfectly, and not all of them have survived in great condition. And that's exactly what collectors pay attention to. The design of the 1978 Lincoln penny remained largely unchanged from earlier years. On the front, you see the familiar profile of Abraham Lincoln, facing to the right. Above his head is the word Liberty, and in front of him is the year, 1978. Just below the year, you'll notice there is no mint mark. That empty space is what identifies it as a Philadelphia coin. Out on the back, you'll find the classic wheat-era replacement design, the Lincoln Memorial. This design had been introduced in 1959 and continued until 2008. It shows the Lincoln Memorial Building in Washington, D.C., with the words United States of America above and 1 cent below. If you look very closely, you can even see a tiny image of Lincoln sitting inside the memorial, a detail many people miss. Now let's talk about what the coin is made of, because this is another important piece of the puzzle. The 1978 penny is composed mostly of copper, about 95% copper and 5% zinc. This gives it that rich, reddish-brown color when it's new. Over time, exposure to air and handling can darken the coin, turning it into shades of brown or even almost black. So if millions were made, why would anyone care about a 1978 no-mint mark penny? The answer comes down to condition and errors. In coin collecting, condition is everything. A penny that has been heavily used, scratched, or worn down is usually only worth its face value. But a coin that looks almost exactly as it did the day it was minted can be worth much more. Collectors use a grading system to evaluate coins, ranging from poor condition all the way up to what's called mint state. A 1978 no-mint mark penny in average circulated condition might only be worth a few cents. But if you find one in uncirculated condition with sharp details, no wear, and a strong original shine, its value can jump significantly. In fact, high-grade examples of the 1978 penny have sold for surprising amounts. Coins graded at the very top of the scale, such as MS-65 or higher, can sell for tens or even hundreds of dollars depending on their quality. Some exceptional examples with perfect surfaces and strong color have reached even higher prices at auction. These are the coins collectors compete for, the ones that stand out from the billions that were made. Another factor that adds value is the presence of mint errors. Errors are mistakes that happen during the coin-making process, and they can make a common coin suddenly rare and desirable. For the 1978 penny, some collectors look for off-center strikes, where the design is not properly aligned on the coin. Others search for double die errors, where parts of the design appear duplicated due to a misalignment in the die used to strike the coin. There are also coins with die cracks, where small lines appear on the surface due to wear in the minting equipment. While some of these errors are minor, others can be quite dramatic and significantly increase the coin's value. Finding one of these error coins in circulation is rare, but it does happen, and that's part of what makes coin collecting so exciting. If you're wondering how to tell whether your 1978 penny is valuable, there are a few things to look for. First, check the overall condition. Is the coin shiny and clean, or is it dull and worn? Look closely at Lincoln's face and the details on the memorial. Sharp, clear features usually mean a higher grade. Next, examine the surface for any unusual markings or errors. Use a magnifying glass if you have one. Look for doubling in the letters or numbers, or any strange shapes that don't seem right. These could be signs of a valuable error. Also, pay attention to the color. Collectors often prefer coins with a bright red color, known as red or RD coins. These are usually the most valuable because they have been well preserved. Coins that have turned brown are still collectible, but generally less valuable unless they have other unique features. One important thing to remember is authenticity. While it's rare, there are altered coins out there. Someone might try to remove a mint mark from a coin to make it look like a Philadelphia issue. That's why it's important to examine the area carefully. A genuine no-mint mark coin will have a smooth, untouched surface where the mint mark would normally be. If you believe you found a valuable coin, it's often a good idea to have it professionally graded by a reputable coin grading service. These organizations can verify the coin's authenticity and assign it a grade, which can greatly increase its value and appeal to collectors. Now here's something surprising. Even though the 1978 penny is not considered rare in general, it's still part of a much bigger story. It represents a time when the United States was producing massive quantities of coinage to keep up with economic activity. Every one of these pennies has passed through countless hands, used in everyday transactions, and played a small role in daily life. And yet, hidden among those billions of coins are a few special ones. Coins that were preserved, coins that were struck just a little differently, coins that collectors now treasure. It's a reminder that value isn't always obvious at first glance. Collectors love the 1978 no-mint mark penny for several reasons. It's accessible, meaning almost anyone can find one. It's part of a historic series that connects generations of Americans. And it offers the thrill of discovery, The possibility that a simple coin in your pocket could be something more, that there's also a sense of nostalgia attached to it. For many people, these pennies bring back memories of childhood, of counting coins, of saving change in a jar. Holding one is like holding a small piece of history, something that has traveled through time and still exists today. As we come to the end of this story, think about the coins you have around you right now. That jar of spare change, that handful of pennies in your drawer, the ones you almost never pay attention to. What if one of them is a 1978 no-mint mark penny in exceptional condition? What if it has a small error that makes it unique? The truth is, most people will never notice. They'll spend it without a second thought. But now you know what to look for. You know the details that matter, the signs that collectors care about, and the hidden potential inside an ordinary-looking coin. And that's what makes coin collecting so fascinating. It's not just about money. It's about curiosity, history, and the excitement of finding something unexpected. So the next time you see a penny, don't ignore it. Take a closer look. Because sometimes the smallest things can hold the biggest surprises. Welcome back. Imagine holding a simple penny in your hand. One you might normally ignore, toss into a jar, or spend without a second thought. Now imagine that same penny quietly carrying hidden details that could make collectors stop and take a closer look. Today, we're diving into the story of the 1979 D. Lincoln penny, a coin that may seem ordinary, but has a story and value that might surprise you. The 1979 D. Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin produced in Denver, which is what the small D mint mark represents. At first glance, it looks just like any other penny from the late 20th century. It features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. Millions of these coins were made, and many are still circulating today. But as with many coins, the real story lies beneath the surface. To understand this coin, we have to go back to the late 1970s in the United States. The country was dealing with economic changes, rising inflation, and a growing need for efficient coin production. Pennies were still widely used in daily transactions, and the U.S. Mint continued producing them in large numbers to meet demand. In 1979, the Denver Mint struck hundreds of millions of these coins, making them extremely common in everyday use. Despite their high mintage, coins like the 1979 D penny are important pieces of American history. Each one reflects the economic conditions, design standards, and minting technology of its time. The design itself had already been in use for decades. The front, or obverse, shows Abraham Lincoln facing right, a design first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of his birth. Above his head, you'll see the word Liberty, and to the right, the date 1979 along with the small D mint mark. On the reverse side, the Lincoln Memorial stands proudly, a design introduced in 1959. If you look very closely, you can even see a tiny depiction of Lincoln sitting inside the memorial, a detail that many people never notice. This combination of designs remained unchanged for 50 years, making coins like the 1979 D penny part of a long and consistent era in U.S. coinage. Now let's talk about what makes this coin interesting beyond its appearance. The 1979 D penny is made primarily of copper, with a small amount of zinc mixed in. This gives it that classic reddish-brown color when it's new. Over time, exposure to air and handling can change its color to a darker brown. Collectors often categorize these coins based on their color, with bright red coins usually being more desirable. While most 1979 D pennies are worth only a few cents, certain factors can increase their value. Condition is one of the most important. A coin that has never been used in circulation, known as an uncirculated coin, can be worth significantly more than one that has been worn down over time. Coins graded in very high condition, especially those with sharp details and no visible damage, can attract serious attention from collectors. But what really sparks excitement are mint errors. These are mistakes made during the production process, and they can turn an ordinary coin into something rare and valuable. With the 1979 D penny, collectors have found examples with off-center strikes, where the design is not properly aligned. Others may show doubled features, where parts of the design appear slightly duplicated due to a misalignment during striking. There are also cases of die cracks or small raised lines on the coin caused by worn-out minting equipment. While some of these errors are subtle, others are dramatic enough to make the coin stand out immediately. These unique characteristics are what collectors look for, and they can significantly increase a coin's value. When it comes to real market value, most 1979D pennies in average condition are worth just 1 to 5 cents. However, uncirculated examples can sell for a few dollars depending on their quality. High-grade coins, especially those certified by professional grading services, can reach much higher prices. In some cases, pristine examples have sold for over $50 or more at auction. Error coins are where things get even more interesting. A well-defined off-center strike or a strong double die can push the value into the hundreds. The rarer and more visually noticeable the error, the more collectors are willing to pay. These coins are not easy to find, which is why they are so highly sought after. If you're wondering whether you might have a valuable 1979D penny, there are a few things to look for. First, check the mint mark. The small d should be clearly visible near the date. Next, examine the coin's condition. Look for sharp details, clean surfaces, and minimal wear. A magnifying glass can help you spot finer details that are not visible to the naked eye. Then, look closely for any unusual features. Check if the design appears off-center, if there are any doubling effects on the letters or numbers, or if there are strange lines or marks that don't seem normal. These could be signs of a mint error. It's also important to compare your coin with known examples to see if anything stands out. Authenticity is another key factor. While it's rare for someone to fake a coin like the 1979D penny due to its generally low value, high-grade or error coins could be altered or misrepresented. If you believe you have a valuable piece, it's always a good idea to have it evaluated by a professional coin grading service. They can confirm its authenticity and assign it a grade, which helps determine its market value. Here's something many people don't realize. Even though the 1979D penny is common, it represents a time when coins were still made mostly of copper. Just a few years later, in 1982, the composition of the penny changed to mostly zinc due to rising copper prices. This makes pre-1982 pennies, including the 1979D, part of the last generation of traditional copper coins in everyday circulation. Another interesting detail is how many of these coins are still out there. Because they were produced in such large numbers, you can still find them in pocket change, coin jars, or old collections. This means that anyone, even today, has a chance of discovering a high-quality or error coin without spending a fortune. Collectors love coins like the 1979D penny not because they are all rare, but because they are accessible. They offer a perfect entry point for beginners who want to learn about coin collecting. At the same time, they still hold the potential for exciting discoveries, especially when it comes to errors or high-grade examples. There's also a sense of nostalgia attached to these coins. They remind people of a different time, when pennies were used more frequently, and when everyday transactions often involved small change. Holding one of these coins can feel like holding a small piece of history, a connection to the past that has survived decades of use. For seasoned collectors, the challenge lies in finding the best possible example. They look for coins with flawless surfaces, strong luster, and perfectly struck details. These are the coins that stand out in a collection and command higher prices in the market. And then there's the thrill of the hunt. The idea that a valuable coin could be hiding in plain sight keeps collectors searching through rolls of pennies, old jars, and even loose change. It's this sense of possibility that makes coin collecting so engaging and rewarding. So the next time you come across a 1979D Lincoln penny, don't be too quick to dismiss it. Take a closer look. Check its condition, examine its details, and see if anything seems unusual. You might just discover that what looks like an ordinary coin has a story worth telling. Because in the world of coin collecting, value isn't always obvious. Sometimes, it's hidden in the smallest details, waiting for someone curious enough to notice. And who knows, the next penny you pick up might not just be spare change. It might be a piece of history, a collector's prize, or even a small treasure hiding in plain sight. Welcome back. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a simple penny, and discovering it might be worth far more than 1 cent. It sounds unlikely, but for some collectors, that exact moment has turned into an exciting treasure hunt. Today, we're diving into the story of the 1984 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, a coin that most people overlook, yet continues to spark curiosity and value in the world of coin collecting. At first glance, the 1984 Lincoln penny looks completely ordinary. It features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front, a design that has been part of American coinage for decades. But what makes this specific coin interesting is the absence of a mint mark. That tiny detail, or rather the lack of it, raises questions for many people who find one in their change. To understand this coin, we need to go back to the year 1984. During this time, the United States Mint was producing millions of pennies every day. These coins were struck at different mint facilities, mainly in Philadelphia and Denver. Coins from Denver carry a small D mint mark, while coins from Philadelphia, at that time, were often released without any mint mark at all. So when you see a 1984 penny with no mint mark, it usually means it was made in Philadelphia. But here's where things get interesting. Even though millions of these pennies were produced, not all of them are the same. Small variations, minting errors, and condition differences can turn an ordinary coin into something collectors actively search for. The design of the 1984 penny follows the classic Lincoln cent style introduced in 1959. On the front, you see Abraham Lincoln's profile facing right, along with the words, "In God We Trust, Liberty," and the year 1984. On the back, it features the Lincoln Memorial, a design that was used until 2008. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny depiction of Lincoln sitting inside the memorial, which is a fascinating detail many people miss. In terms of metal composition, the 1984 penny is primarily made of copper-plated zinc. This change actually started in 1982, when the mint shifted from mostly copper to a zinc core with a thin copper coating. This makes the coin lighter than older pennies and also more prone to certain types of wear and damage over time. Now, you might be wondering, if millions of these coins exist, how can any of them be valuable? The answer lies in condition and errors. Most 1984 no-mint mark pennies are only worth their face value. But certain versions, especially those with unique characteristics, can be worth significantly more. One of the most talked about variations is the 1984 doubled ear error. On some coins, Lincoln's ear appears to have a noticeable doubling effect. This happens during the minting process when the die used to strike the coin has a slight misalignment. As a result, the image is stamped twice in a slightly offset way, creating a visible doubling. This doubled ear variety has become highly desirable among collectors. Depending on its condition, a 1984 doubled ear penny can sell for anywhere from a few dollars to several $100s. In some cases, high-grade examples that are in near-perfect condition have reached prices over $1,000 at auctions. Condition plays a huge role in determining value. Coins that are uncirculated, meaning they were never used in everyday transactions, are much more valuable than worn ones. Collectors look for sharp details, clean surfaces, and original luster. Even a common 1984 penny can be worth more if it is preserved in excellent condition. There have been real examples where collectors discovered valuable 1984 pennies in everyday change. While most are not rare, the excitement comes from the possibility. Imagine checking a handful of coins and finding one with a visible error. That small discovery could turn into a meaningful addition to a collection or even a profitable sale. If you want to identify a genuine 1984 no-mint mark penny, there are a few simple things to look for. First, check the date carefully. Make sure it clearly reads 1984. Next, look just below the date area where a mint mark would normally appear. If there is no letter, then it was minted in Philadelphia. For error coins like the doubled ear, you'll need to examine Lincoln's ear closely. A magnifying glass or a simple coin loop can help. Look for a clear doubling effect, not just damage or wear. True mint errors have a distinct, consistent appearance that differs from scratches or dents. Another important step is to weigh the coin. A standard 1984 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams due to its zinc composition. If the weight is significantly different, it might indicate damage, alteration, or in rare cases, an unusual minting variation. Be cautious of fake or altered coins. Some people try to create the appearance of errors by modifying coins. Genuine error coins come from the minting process itself, not from post-production changes. If you believe you have a valuable coin, it's a good idea to have it evaluated by a professional coin grading service. There are also some fun and surprising facts about the 1984 penny. For example, even though it's a relatively modern coin, It represents a period of transition in U.S. coin production. The shift to zinc cores was a response to rising metal costs, and it changed the way pennies look and feel. Another interesting detail is how widely these coins are still found in circulation. Unlike older rare coins that have mostly disappeared into collections, 1984 pennies are still out there, passing from hand to hand. This makes the search even more exciting because anyone can find one. Collectors love this coin not just for its potential value, but for the story it tells. It represents everyday American history, a small piece of currency that millions of people have used. Yet within that common appearance lies the possibility of something unique. The thrill of coin collecting often comes from these hidden details. It's not always about owning the rarest coin in the world. Sometimes, it's about noticing something others overlook. A slight doubling, a missing mark, or an unusually well-preserved surface can turn a simple penny into a fascinating discovery. Today, the 1984 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny continues to attract attention from both beginners and experienced collectors. It's accessible, easy to find, and full of potential. Whether you're searching through old jars of coins or checking your daily change, this penny offers a chance to explore history in a hands-on way. As we wrap up, think about the coins you encounter every day. Most people see them as small, insignificant objects. But as we've learned, even a single penny can hold stories, secrets, and sometimes surprising value. The next time you come across a 1984 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, take a closer look. You might just be holding more than you realize. And that's what makes coin collecting so captivating. It turns ordinary moments into opportunities for discovery. So keep your eyes open, stay curious, and who knows, the next coin you find might be the one that changes everything. Imagine reaching into your pocket and pulling out a simple penny, something you might not even look at twice. But what if that ordinary coin was quietly holding a story, a history, and maybe even more value than you ever expected? Today, we're talking about the 1986 Lincoln penny with no mint mark. At first glance, it looks just like millions of other pennies. It carries the familiar face of Abraham Lincoln, a design that most people recognize instantly. But for collectors, this small detail, the absence of a mint mark, can open the door to a deeper story about how and where the coin was made and why it still matters today. The 1986 Lincoln penny is part of a long-running series that began in 1909, when the United States first introduced Lincoln's portrait on the 1-cent coin. By 1986, this design had already been in circulation for decades, becoming one of the most iconic coins in American history. These pennies were produced in massive numbers to meet everyday demand, and they were struck at multiple mints across the country. Now here's where things get interesting. In 1986, pennies were made primarily at 3 locations: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Coins from Denver carry a small D mint mark, and those from San Francisco typically have an S, especially for proof coins. But coins struck in Philadelphia during that time often had no mint mark at all. So when you see a 1986 penny without a mint mark, it usually means it was made in Philadelphia. That might sound common, and in many ways it is. The Philadelphia Mint produced a huge number of pennies in 1986. In fact, billions of them entered circulation. So on the surface, this coin doesn't seem rare. But as with many things in coin collecting, the details matter. Condition, errors, and subtle variations can turn an ordinary coin into something much more interesting. Let's take a closer look at the coin itself. The front, or obverse, features the profile of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner. Above Lincoln's head, you'll see the word Liberty, and to the right, the year 1986. The phrase "In God We Trust" arches along the top. The back, or reverse, shows the Lincoln Memorial, a design introduced in 1959. If you look very closely, you can even see a tiny representation of Lincoln seated inside the memorial. In terms of composition, the 1986 penny is made primarily of zinc with a thin copper coating. This change happened in 1982, when the U.S. Mint shifted from solid copper pennies to a zinc core to reduce production costs. So while the coin looks copper on the outside, it's actually much lighter than older pennies made before 1982. Now let's talk about what can make a 1986 no mint mark penny stand out. Since most of these coins were heavily circulated, finding one in excellent condition is not easy. Coins that have been preserved with minimal wear, strong details, and original shine are far more desirable to collectors. These are often graded by professional services and can carry a much higher value than a typical worn coin. But condition is only part of the story. Errors are where things get really exciting. During the minting process, small mistakes can occur, and these errors can transform a common coin into a collector's prize. For the 1986 penny, some known errors include off-center strikes, double die variations, and die cracks. While not extremely common, these errors do exist, and they can significantly increase a coin's value. For example, a standard circulated 1986 penny without a mint mark might only be worth 1 or 2 cents. But a high-grade uncirculated example, especially one graded MS65 or higher, can sell for several dollars. And if you add a noticeable minting error into the mix, the value can jump even further. Some error coins have sold for tens or even hundreds of dollars, depending on the severity and uniqueness of the mistake. There have been auction listings where pristine examples of 1986 no-mint mark pennies, graded at the highest levels, have reached impressive prices. While these are not everyday finds, they show that even modern coins can carry hidden value if they meet the right conditions. So how can you tell if you have a valuable one? First, check the date carefully. Make sure it clearly reads 1986. Then look for the absence of a mint mark below the date. That confirms it was likely struck in Philadelphia. Next, examine the coin's condition. Is the surface smooth and shiny, or is it worn and dull? Are the details sharp, especially in Lincoln's hair and the Lincoln Memorial on the back? After that, look closely for any unusual features. Are the letters doubled? Is the design slightly off-center? Do you see cracks or raised lines that shouldn't be there? These small details can make a big difference. It's also important to watch out for damage that might look like an error but isn't. Scratches, dents, and corrosion are usually caused by circulation and do not add value. Real mint errors happen during production and often have a distinct, recognizable pattern. Another tip is to compare your coin with verified examples. Many collectors use online resources or coin guides to match what they see. And if you believe you've found something special, professional grading services can authenticate and grade your coin, giving you a clearer idea of its value. Here's something surprising. Even though billions of these pennies were made, most people never think twice about them. They pass from hand to hand, sit in jars, or get lost in drawers. But among those countless coins, a small number stand out due to their condition or unique features. That's what keeps collectors searching. Another fun fact is that the Lincoln Penny series is one of the longest-running coin designs in U.S. history. Since its introduction in 1909, it has gone through several reverse design changes, but Lincoln's portrait has remained a constant. The 1986 penny is part of that legacy, representing a time when the Lincoln Memorial design was still in use, just a few decades before it was replaced in 2009. Collectors love this coin not because it's the rarest, but because it's accessible. Almost anyone can find one, which makes it an entry point into the world of coin collecting. It teaches people to pay attention to details, to look closer at everyday objects, and to appreciate the history behind them. There's also a certain excitement in the possibility. The idea that something so small and ordinary could hold unexpected value is what draws people in. It's not just about money. It's about discovery, curiosity, and the thrill of finding something unique. And that's really the heart of coin collecting. It turns everyday moments into opportunities. The next time you receive change, you might pause for a second longer. You might look at that penny and wonder where it's been, how many hands it has passed through, and whether it holds a story worth telling. So the 1986 Lincoln penny with no mint mark may not seem extraordinary at first glance. But when you take the time to understand it, to examine its details, and to explore its history, it becomes something more than just a coin. It becomes a small piece of a much larger story. And who knows, the next time you check your pocket change, you might just find one waiting there, quietly holding its secrets, ready to be discovered. Welcome back. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a simple penny, and realizing it might be worth far more than 1 cent. Not because it's gold, not because it's ancient, but because of something small, something most people would never notice. Today, we're talking about the 1991 Lincoln penny with no mint mark. At first glance, it looks completely ordinary. It's a coin millions of Americans have handled without a second thought. But for collectors, this tiny detail, or the lack of it, can turn a common coin into something worth a second look. The 1991 Lincoln penny is part of one of the longest-running coin series in United States history. First introduced in 1909 to honor President Abraham Lincoln, this design marked a major shift in American coinage. It was the first time a real historical figure appeared on a regular circulating U.S. coin. By 1991, the Lincoln penny had already been in circulation for over 80 years, becoming one of the most recognized coins in the country. In 1991, the United States Mint was producing pennies at multiple locations, primarily Philadelphia and Denver. Coins made in Denver carry a small D mint mark, while coins from Philadelphia traditionally had no mint mark at all. That means a 1991 penny without a mint mark was struck in Philadelphia. On the surface, that doesn't sound rare, and in most cases, it isn't. Billions of these coins were produced that year. But here's where things start to get interesting. Even though the 1991 no mint mark penny is common, certain examples of this coin have caught the attention of collectors. The difference lies not in the date or the design, but in the tiny imperfections and variations that occurred during the minting process. These small details can turn an ordinary coin into something much more valuable. Let's take a closer look at the coin itself. On the front, or obverse, you'll see the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, facing to the right. Above his head is the word Liberty, and in front of him is the date, 1991. The phrase, "In God We Trust," arches along the top. On a no-mint mark coin, you won't see any letter beneath the date, which is exactly what identifies it as being minted in Philadelphia. Flip the coin over, and you'll find the Lincoln Memorial design, which was used from 1959 until 2008. If you look very closely, you can even see a tiny representation of the Lincoln statue inside the memorial. This level of detail, especially on such a small coin, is one of the reasons collectors admire the design. Now let's talk about what really matters to collectors: errors and condition. Most 1991 no-mint mark pennies are only worth face value. But coins in exceptional condition, especially those graded as uncirculated or mint state, can sell for several dollars or more. And when you add minting errors into the mix, the value can increase significantly. One of the most sought-after types of errors is the double die. This happens when the coin's design is stamped more than once in slightly different positions, creating a noticeable doubling effect on the letters or numbers. On a 1991 penny, this might appear in the date or in the words Liberty or In God We Trust. While not extremely common, these error coins can attract serious attention from collectors. Another type of error is off-center strikes. This occurs when the coin isn't properly aligned during the minting process, causing part of the design to be missing. Depending on how dramatic the error is, these coins can be worth anywhere from a few dollars to much more. There are also die cracks and die chips, which appear as raised lines or bumps on the surface of the coin. These happen when the minting equipment begins to wear down. While some of these errors are minor, others can be quite noticeable and collectible. But beyond errors, condition plays a huge role in value. Coins are graded on a scale that ranges from heavily worn to perfect mint condition. A 1991 no-mint mark penny that has been in circulation for years will show scratches, fading, and general wear. These are typically only worth 1 cent. However, a coin that has been preserved carefully with its original shine and sharp details intact can be worth much more to a collector. For example, a high-grade 1991 penny graded MS65 or higher could sell for several dollars. While that might not sound life-changing, it's a big jump from 1 cent. And in rare cases, coins with exceptional quality or unique errors have sold for even higher prices at auctions. Collectors often search through rolls of pennies, hoping to find that one special coin hiding among thousands of ordinary ones. It's like a treasure hunt where the prize might be sitting in your change jar right now. So, how can you tell if your 1991 no-mint mark penny is valuable? Start by examining the coin closely. Look at the date and the lettering. Check for any signs of doubling, unusual marks, or missing details. Pay attention to the overall condition. Is the coin shiny? Are the edges sharp? Does it look almost new, even though it's decades old? Next, compare your coin to known examples. There are online resources and coin guides that show what different errors look like. If you think you've found something unusual, you might consider having the coin evaluated by a professional grading service. Be careful, though. Not every unusual mark is a valuable error. Sometimes damage from circulation can look like an error, but it doesn't add value. Scratches, dents, and corrosion are usually signs of wear, not rarity. Another important thing to remember is that cleaning a coin can actually reduce its value. Many beginners make the mistake of trying to polish their coins to make them look better. In the world of coin collecting, original condition is everything. A cleaned coin often loses its appeal to collectors. Now here's a fun detail that surprises many people. Even though the 1991 penny is relatively modern, it's part of a time when the composition of pennies had already changed. Before 1982, pennies were made mostly of copper. But by 1991, they were primarily zinc with a thin copper coating. This change was made to reduce production costs as the price of copper increased. That means your 1991 penny might look like copper, but inside, it's mostly zinc. It's a small detail, but it reflects a larger story about economics and how even the smallest coins are influenced by global markets. Collectors love coins like the 1991 no-mint mark penny not because they're all rare, but because they offer possibilities. They represent the idea that value isn't always obvious. Sometimes, it's hidden in the smallest details, waiting to be discovered by someone curious enough to look closer. There's also a sense of connection to history. Even though 1991 might not feel like the distant past, every coin from that year has traveled through countless hands. It has been part of everyday life, used in transactions, carried in pockets, dropped into jars. Each coin has its own silent story, and that's part of the magic of coin collecting. It turns ordinary objects into pieces of history. It invites you to slow down, to observe, and to appreciate the details that most people overlook. So the next time you come across a penny, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a moment to look at it. Check the date. Notice the details. Because even a coin as common as the 1991 Lincoln penny with no mint mark can hold surprises. It might not make you rich overnight, but it might spark something even more valuable. A curiosity that leads you into a world of discovery, history, and hidden treasures. And who knows? The next coin you examine could be the one that turns an ordinary moment into an extraordinary find. Welcome back. Imagine picking up a simple penny from your pocket, something most people would ignore, and discovering that it might be worth far more than 1 cent. Today, we're diving into the story of the 1995 D-Mint Mark Lincoln penny, a coin that looks ordinary but holds details that can surprise even experienced collectors. The 1995 D Lincoln penny is part of the long-running Lincoln cent series, one of the most recognizable coins in American history. The D Mint mark tells us it was produced at the Denver Mint, one of the major coin-producing facilities in the United States. At first glance, it doesn't seem special. It carries the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back, a design that had been in use for decades. But as with many coins, the real story lies beneath the surface. To understand this coin, we need to go back to 1995. This was a time when billions of pennies were being produced each year to meet circulation demand. The Denver Mint alone struck over 1.4 billion Lincoln cents that year. With such a massive number, you might assume none of them could be rare or valuable. And in most cases, you would be right. However, coin collecting is not just about how many coins were made. It's about condition, errors, and unique variations that make certain pieces stand out. The Lincoln penny itself has a long history, first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of Abraham Lincoln. By 1995, the design had become a classic. On the front, you see Lincoln's profile facing right, along with the words "In God We Trust" above, "Liberty" to the left, and the year with the mint mark to the right. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial stands proudly, with tiny details that even show the statue of Lincoln inside if you look closely. The 1995 D penny is made primarily of zinc with a thin copper coating. This composition was introduced in 1982 to reduce costs, as pure copper coins had become too expensive to produce. While this might make the coin seem less valuable in terms of metal content, collectors are far more interested in its condition and any unusual features it may have. Now here's where things get interesting. While most 1995 D pennies are common, certain varieties and errors can make them highly collectible. One of the most talked about features in 1995 pennies is the double die effect, although this is more famously associated with the Philadelphia Mint that year. However, even Denver minted coins can show minor doubling or striking irregularities that catch a collector's eye. In addition to doubling, collectors look for off-center strikes, die cracks, and other minting errors. These happen when the coin is not perfectly aligned during production, or when the dies used to strike the coin begin to wear out or develop flaws. A small error might not seem like much, but in the world of coin collecting, even a tiny difference can turn an ordinary penny into something special. Condition is another major factor. Most 1995 D pennies have been heavily circulated, meaning they show wear, scratches, and discoloration. But if you happen to find one in uncirculated condition, especially with its original red copper color still intact, it can be worth significantly more than face value. Collectors use grading systems to evaluate coins, and a high-grade example can stand out even among millions of others. So how much can a 1995 D Lincoln penny actually be worth? In most cases, a circulated coin is still worth just 1 cent. However, uncirculated examples can sell for a few dollars, and coins in near-perfect condition, graded at the highest levels, have been known to reach prices of $20 or more. If the coin has a noticeable error or unique feature, the value can increase even further, sometimes reaching hundreds of dollars depending on the rarity and demand. There have been instances where collectors paid premium prices for exceptional examples. Coins graded MS-67 or higher, which means they are in almost flawless condition, are extremely rare for this year. These coins can attract competitive bidding at auctions, especially when collectors are trying to complete a high-quality set. If you're wondering whether you might have one of these valuable pennies, there are a few things to look for. Start by checking the date and mint mark. The D should be clearly visible just below the year 1995. Next, examine the coin closely under good lighting. Look for sharp details in Lincoln's hair and the lines of the Lincoln Memorial. A strong, clear strike is a good sign. Also pay attention to the color. Coins are often described as red, red-brown, or brown. A bright red coin indicates minimal oxidation and is generally more desirable. If you notice any unusual features, such as doubling in the letters or numbers, or if the design appears slightly off-center, you may have something worth investigating further. One important thing to remember is authenticity. While pennies are rarely counterfeited compared to higher-value coins, altered coins do exist. Some people try to modify coins to create the appearance of errors. To avoid this, it's best to compare your coin with verified examples or have it evaluated by a professional grading service. Here's a fun detail that many people don't realize. If you look very closely at the back of a Lincoln Memorial penny, you can actually see the tiny figure of Abraham Lincoln sitting inside the memorial. It's one of the few times in U.S. coinage where the same person appears on both sides of a coin. This small detail adds to the charm and historical significance of the design. Another interesting fact is how these coins were produced in such massive quantities. The Denver Mint operated at incredible speed, striking coins by the thousands every minute. With that level of production, it's almost inevitable that small variations and errors would occur, which is exactly what collectors hope to find out. So why do collectors still care about a coin like the 1995 D penny today? The answer lies in the thrill of discovery. Even though the coin itself is common, the possibility of finding a high-grade example or a rare error keeps collectors searching through rolls of pennies and pocket change. It's like a treasure hunt where the reward could be hiding in plain sight. For many collectors, the 1995 D penny is also part of a larger goal. Completing a full set of Lincoln cents, especially in high condition, is a challenge that requires patience and dedication. Each coin, even the more common ones, plays a role in telling the story of American history and minting technology. There's also a sense of nostalgia attached to these coins. Many people remember using pennies in everyday transactions, saving them in jars, or searching through them as children. Finding a coin that stands out brings back those memories and adds a personal connection to the hobby. As we come to the end of this story, think about the coins you pass by every day. That small, copper-colored penny might not seem important, but it carries history, craftsmanship, and the potential for hidden value. The 1995 D. Lincoln penny is a perfect example of how something ordinary can become extraordinary when you take a closer look. And the next time you find a penny, take a moment before you spend it. Because you never know. That one small coin could be more than just spare change. Could be a piece of history waiting to be discovered.